The screams pierced through the afternoon air, sharp and desperate, but the crowd at Paradise Cove Beach Resort barely moved. Tanisha Lewis stood at the edge of the water, her toes curling in the sand as she watched the scene unfolding 50 feet from shore. A small girl, maybe 7 years old, thrashed in the waves, her blonde hair disappearing under the water every few seconds. Her arms flailed wildly, and each time her head broke the surface, a choked cry escaped before she went under again. "Help her. Someone help my daughter." A man's voice roared from the water. He was trying to swim toward the child, but the current kept pushing him back. His face, twisted with terror, turned toward the beach where at least 40 people stood watching. "Please? She's drowning." Tanisha's heart pounded against her ribs. She looked around at the other beachgoers. A couple sat under an umbrella, the woman covering her mouth with her hand but neither of them moving. A group of teenage boys stood knee-deep in the water, phones out, recording the scene. An elderly man shook his head slowly, backing away from the shore. A lifeguard station sat empty, its red flag flapping in the wind with a sign that read, "Off duty." The little girl went under again. This time she stayed down longer. Too long. "Someone call 911, the man in the water shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. He dove under, trying to reach her, but the waves were too strong. When he surfaced, gasping, his eyes scanned the beach with wild panic. "Why won't anyone help us?" Tanisha felt her legs trembling. She couldn't swim well. Her grandmother had never taught her because they'd never lived near water. The deep end of a pool made her anxious, and the ocean terrified her with its unpredictable currents and vast darkness below. She was only here on vacation because her coworker had canceled last minute, leaving Tanisha with a non-refundable resort package and a week of forced solo relaxation. The girl surfaced one more time. Her eyes were closed now, her movements weak and uncoordinated. She couldn't have weighed more than 60 pounds, her small frame limp in the water like a rag doll. Tanisha looked at the crowd again. No one moved. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat turned away, pulling her own children closer. A man in swim trunks shook his head and walked toward the resort building. The teenage boys kept filming. Something inside Tanisha snapped. She kicked off her sandals and ran into the water, still wearing her bright blue sundress. The initial cold shock made her gasp, but she pushed forward, her feet struggling to find purchase on the shifting sand beneath. The water rose to her knees, then her waist, then her chest. The waves pushed against her, trying to knock her back, but she kept moving toward where she'd last seen the girl go under. "Thank God," the man shouted when he saw her coming. "She's just ahead. Please hurry." Tanisha's feet left the bottom and panic seized her throat. She forced herself to swim, her strokes clumsy and inefficient. Salt water splashed into her mouth and eyes, burning and bitter. She could barely see through the spray, but she kept going, driven by something stronger than her fear. There. A flash of pink swimsuit beneath the surface. Tanisha filled her lungs with air and dove down. The underwater world was murky green, sand swirling in clouds. Her eyes stung from the salt, but she forced them open. The girl floated a few feet below, her body relaxed and still, her hair flowing around her face like seaweed. Tanisha kicked down, grabbed the child under her arms, and pulled upward with every ounce of strength she had. They broke the surface together. The girl's head lolled back, her face pale and her lips tinged with blue. Tanisha wrapped one arm around the small body and used the other to paddle back toward shore, her legs kicking frantically beneath them. Each wave felt like it was trying to pull them back out to sea. The man reached them. His face was streaked with tears and salt water, his eyes red and wild. "Sophie. Oh God, Sophie." He grabbed his daughter from Tanisha's arms and together they struggled toward the beach. Tanisha's lungs burned. Her arms felt like lead. A wave caught her from the side and she went under, water flooding her nose and mouth. She kicked up, broke the surface, coughed violently. Another wave hit. She couldn't tell which way was shore anymore. Strong hands grabbed her arm. The man had passed his daughter to someone on the beach and come back for her. He pulled her forward and suddenly they were in shallow water. Tanisha's knees hit sand and she crawled forward onto dry land, collapsing onto her stomach, coughing up salt water and gasping for air. "Sophie. Somebody call an ambulance." The man's voice sounded distant, muffled by the pounding of blood in Tanisha's ears. She turned her head and saw him kneeling over his daughter, his hands on her small chest, pushing down in rhythms. "Breathe, baby. Please breathe." Tanisha forced herself to sit up. The crowd that had been so still moments before now pressed in closer, everyone suddenly interested in the outcome they'd refused to prevent. Someone was on a phone. Someone else had grabbed towels from their beach bag. The teenage boys were still filming. The little girl coughed. Water spilled from her mouth and she coughed again, harder. Her eyes fluttered open. Sophie. Yes. That's it, baby. The man gathered her into his arms, crying openly now. The girl coughed more water up, then started to cry, a weak, whimpering sound that grew stronger with each breath. The crowd erupted in scattered applause. A few people patted each other on the back as if they'd done something. The woman in the wide-brimmed hat smiled and nodded approvingly. The teenage boys posted their videos. Tanisha sat in the sand, her blue dress plastered to her body, water dripping from her hair. Her whole body shook from adrenaline and cold. She watched the man hold his daughter, rocking her gently as sirens wailed in the distance. He looked up and met Tanisha's eyes over his daughter's head. His face was a mixture of overwhelming relief, gratitude, and something else. Shame, maybe, for the world that had made this moment necessary. You saved her, he said, his voice breaking. No one else would help us, but you saved her life. Tanisha nodded, unable to speak. Her throat felt raw from the salt water and the screaming of her lungs. She became aware of pain in her left arm where she'd scraped it against something underwater, blood mixing with sand on her skin. Paramedics rushed onto the beach, their equipment rattling. They took the little girl from her father's arms, checking her vitals, asking questions. The man answered mechanically, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. Another paramedic approached Tanisha, but she waved him off. I'm okay, she managed to croak. Check the little girl. Ma'am, you're bleeding, the paramedic insisted, kneeling beside her. Let me at least clean that wound. Tanisha looked down at her arm. The scrape was deeper than she'd thought, running from her elbow to her wrist. It throbbed now that she was aware of it. She let the paramedic work, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that stung worse than the salt water had. The crowd began to disperse. The excitement was over. People returned to their towels, their drinks, their conversations. Within minutes, it was as if nothing had happened. The woman in the hat reapplied her sunscreen. The teenage boys dove into the waves, laughing. Life at Paradise Cove Beach Resort continued. But Tanisha's life had just changed forever. She didn't know it yet, sitting there in the sand with her scraped arm and soaked dress and trembling hands. She didn't know about the man whose daughter she'd saved, or the way her single act of courage would ripple outward, touching lives in ways she couldn't imagine. She didn't know that the terrified father kneeling beside the ambulance was Harrison Bradford, CEO of Bradford Technologies, worth $3.2 billion. She didn't know that Sophie Bradford, the little girl coughing and crying in the paramedic's arms, would become like a daughter to her. She didn't know that in exactly 8 months she'd be standing at an altar wearing a white dress, looking into Harrison's eyes and promising forever. All she knew was that a child had been drowning and no one had helped. So she had jumped in even though she was terrified. Even though she couldn't really swim. Even though everyone else had chosen to do nothing. That choice, made in a split second of pure instinct and compassion, would change everything. If you witnessed someone drowning and everyone around you did nothing, would you have the courage to jump in like Tanisha did? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to never miss stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Tanisha woke up the next morning in her hotel room with her entire body aching. Her arms felt like someone had beaten them with hammers. Her throat was raw and scratchy. The scrape on her left arm throbbed beneath its white bandage. But she was alive, and more importantly, so was that little girl. She checked her phone. 7 missed calls from her mother, 3 from her grandmother, and a dozen text messages from friends who'd somehow already heard about yesterday. Social media, she realized. Those teenage boys had posted their videos. She was probably all over the internet by now. Tanisha groaned and pulled the covers over her head. She didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to enjoy the last 5 days of her vacation in peace, maybe work on her tan, read the 3 books she'd brought, and forget about the stress waiting for her back in Atlanta. Her teaching position was uncertain after budget cuts at her school. Her student loans felt impossible to pay off. Her apartment lease was ending and rent prices were climbing. She'd come to Paradise Cove to escape her problems, not to become a viral video sensation. A knock on her door made her jump. She glanced at the clock. 9:30 in the morning. Housekeeping usually didn't come until noon. Tanisha climbed out of bed, still wearing the resort bathrobe they'd given her after the paramedics had cleared her at the beach. She opened the door a crack and froze. The man from yesterday stood in the hallway. He looked different now, clean and dry, wearing khaki pants and a crisp white button-down shirt. His blonde hair was neatly combed, and his blue eyes were clear despite the dark circles underneath them. He held a massive bouquet of flowers in one hand and a gift basket in the other. I'm sorry to bother you, he said quickly, seeing her surprise. I'm Harrison Bradford. My daughter, Sophie, the little girl you saved yesterday. His voice cracked slightly on the word saved. I needed to thank you properly. The hotel manager told me your room number. I hope that's okay. Tanisha's first instinct was to say no, that it wasn't okay, that she wanted to be left alone. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. When someone offers you kindness, baby, you accept it with grace. That's how we keep love moving through the world. She opened the door wider. Come in. I'm Tanisha Lewis. But I guess you already knew that if you got my room number. Harrison stepped inside, setting the flowers and basket on the small table by the window. I hope I'm not being too forward. I couldn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie going under the water. I kept thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been there. If you hadn't been brave enough to do what no one else would do. Tanisha sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly aware of how informal she looked in her bathrobe while he stood there looking like he'd stepped out of a business magazine. How is Sophie? Is she okay? She's perfect. The doctors kept her overnight for observation, but she's completely fine. No water in her lungs, no complications. She's back at our villa now, eating pancakes and watching cartoons like nothing happened. Harrison ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look younger and more vulnerable. But something did happen. She almost died. And you risked your life to save her. I just did what anyone would do, Tanisha said quietly. No. Harrison's voice was firm. That's exactly the point. You did what no one else would do. There were dozens of people on that beach and they all just watched. They recorded it on their phones. They stood there and did nothing while my daughter drowned. His jaw clenched. But you jumped in even though I could see you were scared. Even though you could barely swim yourself. You saved her when no one else would. Tanisha didn't know what to say to that. She looked down at her bandaged arm. Harrison followed her gaze. The paramedic said you should see a doctor about that scrape. It might need stitches. I want to pay for all your medical expenses. And I've already talked to the resort manager. Your hotel stay for the rest of the week is covered, including all meals and amenities. Please let me do this. It's the least I can offer. That's too much, Tanisha protested, even as her grandmother's voice whispered in her mind again. Accept kindness with grace. It's not enough, Harrison said. Nothing could ever be enough to repay what you did. But please let me try. And there's something else. He pulled out a business card and a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Sophie drew you a picture this morning. She wanted me to bring it to you. And this is my card. My personal cell number is on the back. I'd like to take you to dinner tonight if you're willing. Proper thank you. Sophie wants to come too. She wants to meet the lady who saved her. Tanisha took the drawing and unfolded it. A stick figure with brown skin and a blue dress stood next to a smaller stick figure with yellow hair. They were holding hands. Above them, a child's handwriting read, "Thank you for saving me. Love, Sophie." Something in Tanisha's chest tightened. She looked up at Harrison and saw hope and gratitude and something else in his eyes. Not pity exactly, but recognition. Like he saw her, really saw her, in a way most people didn't. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll let you cover the medical expenses and the hotel. And yes to dinner. But nothing more. I didn't save Sophie for a reward. I did it because she needed help. Harrison's shoulders relaxed, relief flooding his face. Thank you. Truly. Dinner at 7? I'll pick you up here. And Tanisha, thank you for giving me back my daughter. Thank you for being brave. When the world was too afraid to care. After he left, Tanisha sat holding Sophie's drawing, her grandmother's words still echoing in her mind. When someone offers you kindness, accept it with grace. That's how we keep love moving through the world. She didn't know it yet, but accepting Harrison's gratitude was the second choice that would change her life. The first had been jumping into the water. This one would lead to everything else. She called her grandmother. Gram, something happened yesterday. Something big. I know, baby. I saw the videos. Everyone's seen the videos. You jumped into the ocean to save a drowning child. Her grandmother's voice was thick with pride. Your grandfather would have been so proud of you. The girl's father wants to thank me. He's offered to pay for things. To take me to dinner with his daughter. And you said yes? I did. Good girl. That's exactly right. You let him show his gratitude. There's no shame in accepting help, Tanisha. You saved his child. That man's going to want to thank you for the rest of his life. The least you can do is let him start. After hanging up, Tanisha looked at the business card Harrison had left. Harrison Bradford, CEO, Bradford Technologies. She pulled out her phone and searched his name. The results made her eyes widen. Harrison Bradford was famous. Billionaire tech CEO. Widower. Single father. Philanthropist. The articles were endless. His company had revolutionized cloud computing. He'd donated millions to children's hospitals. His wife had died 3 years ago in a car accident, leaving him to raise Sophie alone. Tanisha looked at Sophie's drawing again. This wasn't just any little girl she'd saved. This was the daughter of one of the richest men in America. And he wanted to thank her over dinner. She should have felt intimidated. Instead, she felt curious. The man who'd stood in her hotel room hadn't acted like a billionaire. He'd acted like a grateful father, relieved and humble and genuinely kind. Tanisha made a decision. She'd go to dinner. She'd meet Sophie properly. She'd accept Harrison's thanks with the grace her grandmother had taught her. And then she'd enjoy the rest of her vacation and go back to her regular life in Atlanta. That was the plan anyway. But life, as Tanisha was about to learn, rarely follows the plan. Harrison picked Tanisha up at 7 exactly, driving a simple rental car instead of whatever expensive vehicle he probably owned. Sophie sat in the back seat, bouncing with excitement, her blonde hair and pigtails tied with bright green ribbons. "You're her. You're the lady who saved me." Sophie unbuckled her seatbelt the moment Tanisha got in the car and threw her arms around her from behind the seat. "Daddy said you were brave. He said you jumped in even though you were scared." Tanisha turned in her seat to look at the little girl properly for the first time. Sophie had Harrison's blue eyes and a gap between her front teeth that made her smile absolutely adorable. She wore a bright red dress with white flowers on it and light-up sneakers. "I'm glad you're okay," Tanisha said softly. "You gave your daddy and me quite a scare." "Daddy cried," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "He doesn't cry very much. Only when he's really sad or really happy. Yesterday he was both." Harrison cleared his throat from the driver's seat, and Tanisha caught a hint of embarrassment on his face. "Sophie, remember what we talked about?" Inside voice in the car. "Sorry, Daddy." Sophie lowered her volume slightly. "But it's true. You did cry." They drove to a small restaurant on the quieter side of the island, away from the resort areas. It wasn't fancy, just a local place with wooden tables and string lights hanging from the ceiling. The smell of grilled fish and fresh bread filled the air. "I thought you might prefer somewhere more private," Harrison explained as they were seated at a corner table. "The resort restaurants can get crowded. Too many cameras." Tanisha appreciated that more than he knew. She'd already had 3 people approach her on the walk from her room to the lobby, wanting to take pictures or ask about the rescue. Fame, even temporary fame, felt suffocating. Sophie sat between them, swinging her legs that didn't quite reach the floor. "Miss Tanisha, do you like pancakes?" "I had pancakes this morning. With chocolate chips. Daddy makes the best pancakes." "I bet he does," Tanisha said, smiling. "But I'm more of a waffle person myself." "Waffles are good too," Sophie agreed seriously. "They have the little squares to hold the syrup. That's engineering. Daddy taught me that word." Dinner was easy in a way Tanisha hadn't expected. Sophie talked almost non-stop, telling Tanisha about her stuffed animal collection, her favorite cartoons, and how she wanted to be a marine biologist when she grew up so she could study dolphins. Harrison listened to his daughter with obvious affection, occasionally adding details or gently correcting exaggerations. "Sophie's been obsessed with ocean life since she was 4, Harrison explained. "Which makes yesterday especially ironic. She's taken swimming lessons for years. She's actually a very strong swimmer. But the current caught her off guard." "I got scared," Sophie admitted quietly, her enthusiasm dimming for the first time. "The waves were bigger than I thought. And I couldn't touch the bottom. I called for Daddy but he couldn't get to me." Tanisha reached across the table and squeezed Sophie's hand. "But you're safe now. That's what matters. Because of you." Sophie squeezed back. "Daddy says you're a hero." "I'm not a hero," Tanisha said. "I'm just a kindergarten teacher from Atlanta who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "A kindergarten teacher?" Harrison's interest clearly piqued. "So you work with kids Sophie's age?" "Younger, actually. 5 and 6-year-olds. Though I'm not sure how much longer I'll have that job. Budget cuts. My school district is struggling." Tanisha hadn't meant to share that last part. It slipped out, probably because Harrison and Sophie felt so easy to talk to. She waited for the pity or the awkward subject change. Instead, Harrison leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "That's a shame. Good teachers are worth their weight in gold. I've been trying to find the right school for Sophie for next year. Every place I look seems more focused on test scores than actually teaching kids to love learning." "That's the problem everywhere," Tanisha said, warming to the subject. We spend so much time preparing kids for tests that we forget to teach them curiosity, wonder, the joy of discovering something new. Yes, Harrison said, his eyes bright. Exactly that. Sophie learned more in one afternoon at the tide pools with her grandmother than she did in a month of structured lessons at her last school. They talked about education philosophy while Sophie colored on the paper menu the restaurant had provided. Tanisha found herself relaxing, forgetting for a moment that she was having dinner with a billionaire. Harrison listened like her opinions mattered, asking thoughtful questions, sharing his own observations. He was intelligent, clearly, but not arrogant about it. He seemed genuinely interested in what she thought. What made you want to teach? Harrison asked as they waited for dessert. My grandmother, Tanisha said without hesitation. She raised me and my brother after my parents both had to work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Gram would sit with us every night, teaching us to read using old books from garage sales. She made learning feel like magic, like we were discovering treasures. I wanted to give that to other kids. That's beautiful, Harrison said softly. Teaching as an act of love. What made you want to build a tech company? Tanisha asked, turning the question back on him. Harrison laughed. Honestly? Stubbornness. Everyone told me my ideas wouldn't work, that I was too young, too idealistic. So I set out to prove them wrong. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about proving anything. It became about building something that could actually help people. Technology that makes life easier, not more complicated. Did you prove them wrong? I did. Harrison smiled, but there was no smugness in it. But success doesn't feel the way I thought it would. It's lonelier. More complicated. Especially after. He glanced at Sophie, who was still coloring, oblivious. After I lost my wife. I'm sorry, Tanisha said quietly. That must be incredibly hard. Some days are better than others. Sophie keeps me going. She's the reason I get up every morning. The reason everything I do matters. He looked at his daughter with such fierce love that Tanisha felt her chest tighten. And yesterday when I thought I was going to lose her, his voice broke. I'm sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional at dinner. It's okay, Tanisha said. You don't have to apologize for feeling things. Sophie looked up from her coloring. Daddy, are you sad again? No, sweetie. I'm happy. I'm having dinner with you and Miss Tanisha. That makes me very happy. Dessert came and Sophie dove into her ice cream sundae with enthusiasm. Harrison and Tanisha continued talking, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. He told her about growing up in Connecticut, the son of a banker and a real estate agent. She told him about growing up in Atlanta, the granddaughter of a housekeeper and a mechanic. Their backgrounds were completely different, but somehow the differences didn't matter. Can we have dinner again tomorrow? Sophie asked as they drove Tanisha back to her hotel. Please, Daddy? Please, Miss Tanisha? Tanisha looked at Harrison, unsure. She'd agreed to one dinner, one proper thank you. This was starting to feel like more than that. Harrison met her eyes. No pressure. But if you're willing, we'd love to spend more time with you. Sophie clearly adores you already. And I've enjoyed tonight. More than I've enjoyed anything in a long time. There was again. That recognition in his eyes. That sense of being truly seen. Okay, Tanisha heard herself say. Tomorrow night. But I'm choosing the restaurant this time. Sophie cheered from the back seat. Harrison smiled, and Tanisha saw relief and something else in his expression. Hope maybe. As she got ready for bed that night, Tanisha replayed the evening in her mind. She'd expected awkwardness, forced conversation. A wealthy man feeling obligated to thank the woman who saved his daughter. Instead, she'd found genuine connection. Easy laughter. The kind of conversation that makes 3 hours feel like 30 minutes. Harrison Bradford wasn't what she'd expected. Neither was Sophie. And Tanisha was starting to realize that this vacation was turning into something very different from the quiet, solitary week she'd planned. She fell asleep holding Sophie's drawing, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The next 5 days passed in a blur of shared meals, beach walks, and easy conversation. Harrison and Sophie became a constant presence in Tanisha's vacation. They showed her hidden spots on the island that tourists never found. A small cove where sea turtles nested, a family-owned restaurant that served the best conch fritters, a bookstore tucked down an alley where the owner's cat slept on piles of paperbacks. Sophie attached herself to Tanisha like a small, chatty barnacle. She held Tanisha's hand on their walks. She asked endless questions about teaching, about Atlanta, about everything. She shared her toys and her snacks and her observations about the world with the unfiltered honesty only 7-year-olds possess. My mommy died when I was 4, Sophie told Tanisha on their third day together, as matter-of-factly as if she were commenting on the weather. They were building a sandcastle while Harrison took a phone call a few feet away. I don't remember her very much. Just little bits. Daddy says that's okay. He remembers for both of us. Tanisha's throat tightened. Your daddy loves you very much. I know. Sophie patted sand into a bucket. He's sad sometimes, but he tries to hide it. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. He gets this look on his face like he's far away. But he's been happier this week. Since we met you. The innocence of the statement nearly broke Tanisha's heart. She glanced at Harrison, who was pacing near the water's edge, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing as he talked. Even from a distance she could see the stress in his shoulders, the weight he carried. Building a sandcastle? Harrison asked when he finally hung up and joined them. Can I help? You're not very good at sandcastles, Daddy, Sophie said honestly. But you can dig the moat. They spent the afternoon playing like children, laughing when waves destroyed their careful construction, rebuilding together. Tanisha couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so light, so free from the weight of her worries about jobs and money and uncertain futures. That evening, their last evening before Tanisha had to fly back to Atlanta, Harrison suggested a nice dinner. Just the three of them at one of the resort's upscale restaurants. Tanisha wore the one dress she'd packed that wasn't casual, a green sundress that made her dark skin glow. Harrison wore slacks and a light blue shirt that matched his eyes. Sophie wore her favorite maroon dress with a full skirt that she kept spinning to watch it swirl. I'm going to miss you, Sophie said over appetizers, her voice small and sad. Can't you just come live near us? Then we could see you all the time. Sophie, Harrison said gently. We talked about this. Miss Tanisha has her own life in Atlanta. Her own job and home. I know, Sophie said. But I wish she didn't. I wish she could stay. Tanisha felt her chest constrict. She'd gotten attached too. To Sophie's gap-toothed smile and endless questions. To Harrison's quiet thoughtfulness and the way he listened like her words mattered. To the feeling of belonging somewhere with someone even temporarily. I'll miss you too, Tanisha said truthfully. But we can video chat. And maybe you and your daddy can visit Atlanta sometime. We will, Harrison said firmly. Actually, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. He set down his fork and looked at Tanisha with an intensity that made her breath catch. This week has been important. For both Sophie and me. You've reminded us what it feels like to be happy. To laugh. To look forward to each day. Harrison. Tanisha started, not sure where he was going with this. Let me finish, he said gently. I know we've only known each other for 6 days. I know this might seem sudden. But I want to make you an offer, and I need you to hear me out before you respond. Tanisha's heart was pounding. Okay. You told me about your dream. The literacy program for underprivileged children. You want to create a space where kids can discover the magic of reading the way your grandmother helped you discover it. Harrison leaned forward. Let me fund it. Let me give you the resources to make it happen. Not as charity but as an investment in something that matters. In someone who makes a real difference. Tanisha stared at him. I can't accept that. It's too much. Why is it too much? Harrison challenged gently. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Sophie's future is completely secure. My company runs itself at this point. But you saved my daughter's life. You gave me back the person I love most in this world. Let me do this, please. Let me help you create something beautiful. But I don't. Tanisha struggled to find words. I'm not a charity case. I never said you were. This isn't charity. It's recognition. You're brilliant, Tanisha. You care about kids and education and making the world better. You deserve the chance to pursue your dream without drowning in debt and job uncertainty. Harrison reached across the table and took her hand. Let me help. Not because I pity you but because I believe in you. Because what you want to do matters. Because you deserve support. Tanisha looked at Sophie, who was watching both of them with wide eyes. She thought about her grandmother's words. Accept kindness with grace. That's how we keep love moving through the world. And there's something else, Harrison continued. I'd like to stay in touch. Sophie has clearly bonded with you. And I. He paused, his thumb moving gently across her knuckles. I've enjoyed getting to know you. Very much. I know you live in Atlanta and I'm in Boston, but I travel frequently. I'd like to visit. To see your program develop. To spend more time together. If you're open to that. Tanisha's mind raced. This was crazy. She'd known this man for less than a week. But she couldn't deny the connection between them, strong and real and unexpected. She couldn't deny that Sophie had worked her way into her heart. And she couldn't deny that Harrison's offer, as overwhelming as it was, came from genuine kindness and faith in her abilities. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "This is all happening so fast." "I know," Harrison said. "I'm scared too. But sometimes the best things happen fast. Sometimes you just know. And I know that meeting you, Tanisha Lewis, was the best thing that's happened to me and Sophie in 3 years." "Say yes, Miss Tanisha," Sophie whispered. "Please say yes." Tanisha looked at them both. Father and daughter, hoping, waiting. And she thought about the little girl drowning while everyone watched. She thought about making the choice to jump in despite her fear. Maybe this was another one of those moments. Another choice that required courage. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Yes to the literacy program funding. Yes to staying in touch. Yes to seeing where this goes." Sophie launched herself out of her chair and hugged Tanisha so hard she nearly knocked her out of her seat. Harrison's smile was bright enough to light the entire restaurant. And Tanisha felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening to possibilities she'd never imagined. "Thank you," Harrison said softly. "For trusting me. For trusting this." They spent the rest of dinner making plans. Harrison would connect Tanisha with his lawyers and accountants to set up a proper nonprofit structure for the literacy program. He'd help her find a location in Atlanta, hire staff, purchase books and supplies. He'd visit in 2 weeks to see how things were progressing. "This is real," Tanisha said as they walked on the beach after dinner, Sophie running ahead of them chasing small crabs. "This is actually happening." "This is real," Harrison confirmed. He stopped walking and turned to face her. The moon was bright overhead, reflecting off the water. "And I want you to know something. I'm not doing this to obligate you to me. If you decide tomorrow that you don't want me visiting, that you just want the program funding and nothing more, that's okay. I mean that. This isn't conditional." "I believe you," Tanisha said. And she did. Harrison had proven himself over and over this week. His kindness wasn't manipulative. It was genuine. Good. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "But I hope you don't decide that. Because I really, really want to see you again, Tanisha." "I want to see you again too," she admitted. And there it was out in the open. Not just gratitude or friendship but something more. Something that made her nervous and excited and hopeful all at once. They stood there on the beach, Sophie's laughter echoing across the sand, and Tanisha felt her life transforming in real time. From struggling teacher to founder of her dream program. From lonely vacationer to, what? Friend? Potential girlfriend? She didn't have words for it yet. But she knew it mattered. Knew it was important. "Are you two going to kiss?" Sophie called out, making them both laugh and step apart. "Sophie." Harrison called back, embarrassed. "What?" "That's what people do in movies when they like each other." "Out of the mouths of babes," Tanisha murmured, grinning. Harrison laughed, relaxed and happy in a way Tanisha suspected he wasn't very often. "Maybe someday," he called to his daughter. "If Miss Tanisha wants to." "Someday," Tanisha agreed softly, and saw the hope in Harrison's eyes grow brighter. She flew back to Atlanta the next day with Harrison's business card in her pocket, Sophie's drawings in her carry-on, and a future full of possibilities stretching out before her. The scared kindergarten teacher who jumped into the ocean was becoming someone new. Someone braver. Someone willing to accept help and kindness and maybe, just maybe, love. 3 months later, Tanisha stood in an empty storefront in downtown Atlanta, looking at the space that would soon become Bright Beginnings Literacy Center. The walls needed painting. The floors needed replacing. The windows needed new glass. But she could see it already, finished and full of children, books lining the walls, small tables arranged in learning stations. "What do you think?" Harrison asked, walking up behind her. He'd flown in from Boston that morning specifically to see the space. "I think it's perfect," Tanisha said, and meant it. The location was ideal, right on a bus line, accessible to the neighborhoods she wanted to serve. The rent was reasonable, thanks to Harrison negotiating with the building owner. And the space was large enough to accommodate 40 children at a time. Sophie ran through the empty room, her footsteps echoing. "It's huge. Can I help paint? Please, Daddy?" "We'll see," Harrison said, but he was smiling. This was his 3rd visit to Atlanta in 3 months, and each time he brought Sophie. The little girl had become a constant presence in Tanisha's life through video chats and weekend visits. She sent Tanisha drawings in the mail. She texted misspelled messages about her day. She called Tanisha Miss T now, a nickname that had stuck after she couldn't spell Tanisha correctly in a text. The contractors say they can have everything ready in 6 weeks, Harrison said, consulting his phone. That'll give you time to hire staff, purchase materials, and get the word out to families in the area. Tanisha shook her head in wonder. I can't believe this is happening. 3 months ago I was worried about losing my teaching job. Now I'm starting my own program. You did lose your teaching job, Harrison reminded her. And then you turned it into something better. He was right. The budget cuts had come through 2 weeks after Tanisha returned from Paradise Cove. She'd been let go along with 5 other teachers. The news that should have devastated her had instead felt like a door opening. She'd immediately thrown herself into building Bright Beginnings, spending 12-hour days planning curriculum, designing the space, reaching out to community partners. Harrison had been there every step of the way, even from a distance. He'd connected her with his network of nonprofit experts. He'd reviewed her business plan and budget. He'd made introductions to potential donors and partners. But he'd never taken over, never tried to control her vision. He supported without smothering, advised without commanding. He trusted her to lead. And somewhere in all those phone calls and video chats and working sessions, their relationship had shifted. The attraction that had sparked on the beach had grown into something deeper. Something real. Dinner tonight? Harrison asked as they left the storefront. Just the 3 of us? Actually, Tanisha said, her heart beating faster. I was hoping just the 2 of us. That's okay. My grandmother offered to watch Sophie. Harrison's eyebrows rose. Your grandmother wants to babysit? She's been asking to meet Sophie for weeks. And Sophie's been begging to meet Graham. I thought, if you're comfortable with it. I'm very comfortable with it, Harrison said quietly, and the look in his eyes made Tanisha's breath catch. They'd been dancing around this for months. The almost kiss when he'd visited in week 6. The way their hands brushed during their working dinners. The long phone conversations that lasted past midnight. They both felt it, this pull between them. But neither had pushed, both cautious of moving too fast, of ruining what they were building. Maybe tonight, Tanisha thought. Maybe tonight they'd finally stop dancing around it. Tanisha's grandmother lived in a small house in the same neighborhood where Tanisha had grown up. The porch had flower boxes full of marigolds and wind chimes sang in the breeze. Sophie bounded up the front steps, excited and nervous at once. You must be Sophie, Graham said, opening the door before they could knock. She was 72, with silver hair pulled back in a bun and warm brown eyes behind her glasses. Tanisha has told me so much about you. Come in, come in. I made cookies. Chocolate chip. Sophie asked hopefully. Is there any other kind worth making? Graham winked. Come on, child. Let's leave these 2 alone for a while. We've got cookie baking to do. Tanisha hugged her grandmother. Thank you for this. Go on now, Graham whispered. That man looks at you like you hung the moon. Don't keep him waiting. Harrison drove them to a restaurant Tanisha had suggested, a quiet place with good food and private booths. They ordered wine and appetizers, and for the first time in 3 months, they didn't talk about Bright Beginnings or Sophie or logistics. They just talked. About everything and nothing. About his childhood and hers. About the books they loved and the places they wanted to travel. About the small daily things that make up a life. I've been thinking about something, Harrison said as they finished their main course. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. These past 3 months have been the happiest I've been in years. Working with you. Talking to you. Seeing you with Sophie. It's made me realize something. Tanisha's heart was pounding. What? I'm falling for you, Tanisha. Maybe I've been falling since that first dinner on the beach. But it's gotten harder to pretend this is just friendship or gratitude or partnership. He met her eyes. I care about you. I think about you constantly. And I want more than video chats and business meetings. I want to actually date you. For real. If you want that too. Tanisha felt tears prick her eyes. I've been so scared to hope for this. You. Rich and successful and living in Boston. And I'm me. Starting out, still figuring things out, living in Atlanta. It seemed impossible. It's not impossible, Harrison said firmly. It's just complicated. But I'm willing to be complicated if you are. I can fly to Atlanta every other weekend. You can visit Boston when you have time. We can video chat every night. We can make it work because I want to make it work. What about Sophie? I don't want to confuse her or hurt her if this doesn't. Sophie adores you, Harrison interrupted gently. She asks about you every day. She draws pictures of the three of us together. She already sees you as part of our family. And if this works out the way I hope it does, she'll be thrilled. Tanisha took a deep breath. I care about you too. So much. I've been trying not to, trying to keep it professional and focused on the program. But every time you call, every time you visit, I fall a little more. And it terrifies me. Love is terrifying, Harrison said softly. I lost my wife. I know how much it hurts to lose someone you love. But I also know that hiding from love because you're scared of loss is just another kind of death. A slower one. And I don't want to live that way anymore. He stood up and came around to her side of the booth. Tanisha looked up at him, this man who'd walked into her life because she'd been brave enough to save his daughter. This man who'd become her friend, her partner, her hope for the future. Harrison cupped her face in his hands and leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Tanisha didn't want to pull away. She wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted all of it, complications and distance and terrifying vulnerability included. Their lips met, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't their first kiss, that had happened 2 weeks ago after a particularly successful day of planning. But this felt different. This felt like a beginning. Like a choice they were both making with open eyes and full hearts. When they pulled apart, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. So is that a yes? Will you date me, Tanisha Lewis? Yes, she whispered. Yes to dating. Yes to complicated. Yes to scary. Yes to all of it. They picked up Sophie an hour later. She took one look at them and grinned. You kissed, didn't you? I can tell. You both have the same happy face. Graham laughed from her rocking chair. That girl doesn't miss a thing. We're dating now, Harrison told Sophie seriously. Miss Tanisha is my girlfriend. How do you feel about that? Sophie threw her arms around both of them. Finally. I've been waiting forever. Does this mean you'll get married and Miss T will be my mom? Sophie. Harrison said, embarrassed. We just started dating. We're not talking about marriage yet. But someday? Sophie pressed. Harrison looked at Tanisha, and she saw the hope in his eyes, the possibility of a future neither of them had planned but both of them wanted. Maybe someday, Tanisha said softly. If we're lucky. We're already lucky, Sophie said confidently. We found each other. And standing there in her grandmother's small living room, surrounded by the smell of cookies and the sound of wind chimes and the warmth of people who cared about her, Tanisha realized Sophie was right. They were lucky. All three of them. They'd found each other in the most unexpected way and now they were building something beautiful together. Love, Tanisha was learning, didn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it arrived quietly, growing slowly out of shared meals and working sessions and video chats. Sometimes it built itself one day at a time, one choice at a time, one brave moment at a time. She jumped into the ocean to save a drowning child. Now she was jumping into something equally terrifying and equally necessary. And this time she wasn't jumping alone. Bright Beginnings Literacy Center opened on a bright Saturday morning in October. 30 children showed up for the first day, ranging in age from 5 to 8. Their parents filled out paperwork while the kids explored the space with wide eyes, running their fingers along the shelves of brand new books, sitting at the small tables painted in bright primary colors, playing with the learning materials Tanisha had carefully selected. Harrison and Sophie had flown in for the opening. Sophie wore a bright red volunteer shirt that Tanisha had made special for her and helped greet the younger children at the door. Harrison stood in the back of the room, filming everything on his phone, his face glowing with pride. Look what you built, he said to Tanisha during a quiet moment. Look what you created. Tanisha felt tears in her eyes. The space was exactly what she dreamed of. Warm and welcoming, filled with books and possibility. The walls were painted in soft blues and greens, with quotes about reading and learning stenciled in bright colors. Each child had their own cubby for their things, their name written on a card in careful letters. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the new windows, making everything glow. We created it, Tanisha corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found a way, Harrison said confidently. I just made it happen faster. The program ran from 9 to noon on Saturdays. Tanisha led circle time, reading aloud while children sat on colorful carpet squares. Then they broke into small groups, each child working at their own level with volunteer tutors. They practiced letter sounds and sight words and reading simple sentences. They wrote stories and drew pictures and discovered that learning could be fun. By the time noon arrived, Tanisha was exhausted but exhilarated. Every single child had smiled at some point during the morning. Several had begged to take books home. One little boy, quiet and shy at the start, had read an entire book out loud by the end, his face glowing with accomplishment. "We did it," Tanisha told her volunteers as they cleaned up. "Week 1 is officially a success." Harrison took her out to celebrate that evening. They went to her favorite restaurant, the one with the outdoor patio and live music on weekends. Sophie was having a sleepover at Graham's house, giving them the whole evening alone. "I have something to tell you," Harrison said after they'd ordered. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. "My mother wants to meet you." Tanisha's stomach dropped. "Your mother? I've told her about you. About us. About Bright Beginnings. She's curious." "Curious," Tanisha repeated. She'd seen photos of Patricia Bradford, the elegant older woman with perfect silver hair and designer clothes. The matriarch of a wealthy New England family. The woman who'd probably expected her son to date and marry someone from his own world. "She can be intimidating," Harrison admitted. "But she means well. Mostly. And she wants to meet the woman I'm serious about." "Serious?" Tanisha said, her heart jumping at the word. Harrison reached across the table and took her hand. "We've been dating for 4 months. We talk every day. I fly to Atlanta every other weekend. You've met my daughter, my friends, my colleagues. I'm in love with you, Tanisha. This is serious for me. And my mother wants to meet the woman I'm planning a future with." Tanisha sat back, overwhelmed. "You're in love with me?" "Completely," Harrison said simply. "Have been for a while now. I was just waiting for the right time to say it." "I love you too," Tanisha whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and absolutely true. "I've been scared to say it. Scared that maybe this was all happening too fast, that maybe it couldn't be real." "It's real," Harrison said firmly. "And yes, my mother wants to meet you. She's coming to Boston next weekend. I was hoping you could fly up with me. Stay at my house. Meet her and my sister Rachel. Let them see how incredible you are." Tanisha's mind raced. Meeting the family. The rich, proper Boston family. She thought about her own family, warm and loud and completely different from Harrison's world. Would his mother judge her? Find her lacking? "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll meet them. But Harrison, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood. My grandmother cleaned houses. My grandfather fixed cars. I'm proud of where I come from." "I love where you come from," Harrison said. "I love everything about you. And if my mother can't see how special you are, that's her loss." The following weekend, Tanisha found herself on a plane to Boston, her stomach churning with nerves. Harrison held her hand during the flight while Sophie colored beside them, completely oblivious to Tanisha's anxiety. Harrison's house was in a wealthy suburb, a beautiful colonial with a circular driveway and perfectly manicured lawns. It was elegant without being ostentatious, warm despite its size. Sophie ran inside, calling for her nanny, while Harrison carried Tanisha's bag upstairs. "Guest room or my room?" he asked with a teasing smile. "Guest room," Tanisha said firmly, though she was tempted. They'd been taking things slowly physically, both of them aware of Sophie's presence, both wanting to be sure before they moved forward. "I figured," Harrison said. "But I had to ask." His mother arrived for dinner, bringing his sister Rachel with her. Patricia Bradford was exactly as intimidating as Tanisha had feared. Tall and slim, wearing pearls and a perfectly tailored dress, her silver hair in an elegant bob. She looked Tanisha over with sharp blue eyes, assessing, judging. "So you're the woman my son has been flying across the country to see every other weekend," Patricia said as they shook hands. "That's me," Tanisha said, keeping her voice steady. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Bradford." "Patricia, please." She turned to Harrison. "She's prettier than her photos. You didn't mention she was stunning." Tanisha blinked, surprised by the compliment. Rachel, Harrison's younger sister, was warmer. She hugged Tanisha immediately. "It's so good to meet you. Harrison talks about you constantly. It's actually a little annoying." Dinner was tense. Patricia asked questions that felt like interrogations. Where did Tanisha go to college? What did her parents do? How did she plan to manage a nonprofit with no business experience? Each question felt designed to expose weaknesses, to prove Tanisha wasn't good enough for Harrison. "Mother," Harrison said finally, his voice tight with frustration. "Tanisha saved Sophie's life. She's brilliant and kind and amazing with kids. She's building something important. Can you please just be welcoming?" "I'm being perfectly welcoming," Patricia said coolly. "I'm simply getting to know her. Is that not allowed?" "It's okay," Tanisha said quietly. She looked at Patricia directly. "I know what you're really asking. You want to know if I'm with Harrison for his money. If I'm taking advantage of his gratitude and guilt. If I'm good enough for your son and granddaughter. The table went silent. Patricia's eyebrows rose. The answer is yes, I'm good enough, Tanisha continued, her voice steady. Not because of what I have or where I come from, but because of who I am. I love your son. I adore your granddaughter. I'm not after money or status or an easy life. I'm building something I believe in, something that helps kids who need it. Harrison supports me because he wants to, not because I'm manipulating him. And if you can't accept that, then that's your problem, not mine. Rachel looked like she was trying not to laugh. Harrison's face was somewhere between shocked and proud. Patricia stared at Tanisha for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, a small but genuine smile. Well, you certainly have spine. That's good. Harrison needs someone who won't be pushed around. She picked up her wine glass. I apologize if my questions were intrusive. I'm protective of my son. He's been through a great deal. But I can see you care about him. And that's what matters most. The rest of dinner was easier. Patricia thawed slightly, asking more genuine questions about bright beginnings. Rachel told stories about growing up with Harrison, making everyone laugh. By the time dessert arrived, the tension had mostly dissipated. Later, after Patricia and Rachel had left, Harrison pulled Tanisha into his arms. You were amazing. Standing up to my mother like that. No one ever does that. I wasn't going to sit there and let her make me feel small, Tanisha said. I know my worth, and I know I love you. That's all that matters. I love you too, Harrison murmured against her hair. So much. 2 weeks later, Harrison flew to Atlanta to meet Tanisha's family properly. They gathered at her parents' house, a small but cozy home filled with photos and laughter and the smell of her mother's famous pot roast. Graham was there, along with Tanisha's brother Jerome, her Aunt Carol, and her 3 young cousins. The contrast between the two families couldn't have been starker. Where Harrison's family was formal and reserved, Tanisha's was loud and affectionate. People talked over each other, hugged freely, teased without mercy. Harrison looked overwhelmed at first, but Sophie dove right in, playing with the younger cousins like she'd known them forever. Jerome, Tanisha's older brother, cornered Harrison in the kitchen. So you're the billionaire dating my baby sister. I'm not a billionaire, Harrison said, though he clearly was. And yes, I'm dating Tanisha. She saved your daughter's life and now you're funding her program. Seems convenient. Jerome, Tanisha warned from the doorway. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Jerome said, but his tone wasn't hostile. Just protective. You're from a completely different world. How do we know you're not just playing around? That you're serious about her? I'm going to marry her, Harrison said simply. The room went quiet. He looked at Tanisha, his eyes intense. I haven't asked her yet because I'm waiting for the right moment. But yes, I'm serious. I'm completely serious. I love your sister. I want to spend my life with her. And I'm asking your permission, all of you, to make that happen when the time is right. Tanisha's heart stopped. Her mother gasped. Graham smiled like she'd known all along. He didn't even flinch at your attitude, Graham said to Jerome. That's a good sign. Fine, Jerome said, but he was grinning now. You have my permission. But if you hurt her, billionaire or not, I'll find you. I would expect nothing less, Harrison said seriously. And I won't hurt her. I promise you that. Later, as they sat on the porch swing watching Sophie play in the yard with the cousins, Tanisha leaned her head on Harrison's shoulder. You told my family you're going to propose. I did, Harrison said. Was that too much? It was perfect, Tanisha said softly. But you know you actually have to propose now, right? My family will never let you forget it. I'm counting on it, Harrison said, kissing the top of her head. I'm counting on all of it. The crack started small. A missed video call because Harrison's board meeting ran late. A weekend visit postponed because of a crisis at his company. Tanisha throwing herself into bright beginnings so completely that she forgot to return his texts until hours later. They were busy. Both of them juggling demanding responsibilities, trying to maintain a long-distance relationship across 1,000 miles. It should have been understandable. Normal even. But somewhere in the chaos they started to lose each other. It came to a head 3 weeks after Tanisha met Harrison's family. She was at bright beginnings, working late on lesson plans for the next month, when her phone rang. Patricia Bradford's name appeared on the screen. Tanisha almost didn't answer. But curiosity won out. Hello. Tanisha, it's Patricia. Do you have a moment? Of course. Is everything okay? Is Harrison all right? Harrison is fine. physically at least. But I'm calling because I'm concerned about him. About both of you. Tanisha set down her pen. What do you mean? Harrison's been distracted. Making mistakes at work, which is unlike him. He's traveling constantly, wearing himself thin trying to maintain this relationship with you. And I know it's affecting his time with Sophie too. She's been acting out, asking why her father is always on a plane. Each word was a knife, precise and cutting. Tanisha felt her chest tighten. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Harrison would never tell you. He's too in love to see that this arrangement isn't working. That maybe you two are from worlds too different to bridge. You said you accepted our relationship, Tanisha said, her voice tight. I said I could see you cared about him. But caring isn't enough, is it? Sometimes love means letting go when something isn't working. When it's hurting more than it's helping. After Patricia hung up, Tanisha sat in the empty classroom, staring at the bright colors on the walls, the books on the shelves, everything she'd built with Harrison's help. And she wondered if his mother was right. If she was being selfish, holding on to something beautiful but ultimately impossible. She didn't call Harrison that night. Or the next night. When he finally called her, worried, she kept the conversation short. Said she was busy, stressed, needed space to focus on work. Tanisha, what's going on? Harrison asked, his voice strained. We've barely talked in days. Did I do something wrong? No, she said quickly. I just need some time. To think. To think about what? About us. About whether this is working. Whether it's fair to Sophie for you to be gone so much. Whether it's fair to you to put this much pressure on our relationship. My mother called you, didn't she? Harrison's voice went flat. What did she say? It doesn't matter what she said. She's right. You're exhausted. Sophie needs you. And I'm so focused on bright beginnings that I'm not being a good partner. That's not true, Harrison said firmly. We're both busy. It's temporary. Once the program is more established, once things settle at my company, it'll get easier. Will it? Tanisha asked quietly. Or will there always be something? Another crisis, another obligation, another reason why we can't be together properly. Tanisha, don't do this. Please. We can work through this. I need space, she repeated, hating herself for the words but unable to stop them. Just for a little while. To figure things out. After she hung up, Tanisha put her head down on the desk and cried. She loved Harrison. Loved Sophie. But Patricia's words echoed in her mind. Maybe love wasn't enough. Maybe they were from worlds too different to bridge. Maybe she'd been fooling herself thinking this could work. She threw herself into work for the next 2 weeks, avoiding Harrison's calls, responding to his texts with brief, distant messages. She told herself it was better this way. Cleaner. Less painful in the long run. But every night she went home alone to her apartment, she felt the emptiness of the life she was choosing. Sophie sent her a drawing in the mail. It showed 3 stick figures, but one of them, the one with brown skin and a blue dress, was scribbled out. Where did you go? Sophie had written at the top. Daddy is sad. I'm sad too. Tanisha stared at that drawing for an hour, tears streaming down her face. What was she doing? She was hurting the people she loved because she was scared. Because Patricia Bradford had gotten in her head and made her doubt everything. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Tanisha opened it to find Harrison standing there, looking exhausted and determined. You're here, she said stupidly. You've been avoiding me for 2 weeks. I got on a plane. Harrison walked past her into the apartment. We're talking about this. No. No more distance, no more space, no more running away. I wasn't running, Tanisha started. You were absolutely running, Harrison interrupted. My mother got in your head and you panicked. I know you, Tanisha. I know when you're scared. And I know that when you're scared you pull away to protect yourself. But I won't let you do it this time. She said Sophie's acting out because you're always traveling, Tanisha said, her voice breaking. That I'm being selfish keeping you in this relationship when it's hurting your daughter. Sophie's acting out because the woman she's come to love is suddenly ignoring her, Harrison said firmly. Not because I'm traveling. She understands that I have to work. What she doesn't understand is why Miss T stopped calling, stopped answering her messages, stopped being part of our lives. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing is being honest, Harrison said. The right thing is talking to me when you're scared instead of shutting me out. The right thing is trusting that we can work through hard things together instead of running away at the first sign of difficulty. Tanisha sank onto her couch, exhausted. I don't know how to do this. I've never been in a relationship like this. Never been in love like this. It terrifies me. Harrison sat beside her, taking her hands in his. It terrifies me too. I lost my wife. I know what it's like to love someone and lose them. But I also know that hiding from love because you're scared of loss is just another way of dying. A slower way. You said that before. On our first real date. And I meant it then and I mean it now. I love you, Tanisha. I love your kindness and your passion and your fierce dedication to making the world better. I love how you are with Sophie. I love your family and your friends and everything that makes you who you are. And yes, long distance is hard. Yes, we're both busy. Yes, there are challenges. But I'm willing to face all of them if it means keeping you in my life. What if your mother's right? Tanisha whispered. What if we're too different? We are different, Harrison said. And that's what makes us strong. You challenge me. You keep me grounded. You remind me what matters. And I support you. I believe in you. I help you build your dreams. That's not weakness, Tanisha. That's partnership. I'm sorry, Tanisha said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry I pulled away. I was scared and instead of talking to you I just shut down. I know. But we have to promise each other something. When things get hard, when we're scared, when people like my mother try to make us doubt, we talk to each other. We face it together. We don't run. Deal? Deal? Tanisha whispered. Harrison pulled her into his arms and she let herself cry, releasing the fear and stress of the past 2 weeks. I missed you so much. I missed you too. And so did Sophie. She's actually outside in the rental car. I didn't want to bring her up until I knew we were okay. Bring her up, Tanisha said immediately, wiping her tears. Please. I need to apologize to her. Harrison went down and returned with Sophie, who looked nervous and hopeful at once. Tanisha knelt down to Sophie's level. I'm sorry I disappeared. I got scared and made a bad choice. But I'm not going anywhere now. I promise. Sophie threw herself into Tanisha's arms. Don't leave again, Miss T. Please. You're part of our family. I'm part of your family, Tanisha repeated, looking up at Harrison over Sophie's head. He was watching them with love and relief written all over his face. And family doesn't give up on each other. I won't make that mistake again. They spent the weekend together, the three of them, rebuilding the trust that Tanisha's fear had damaged. They talked honestly about the challenges of long distance, about setting better boundaries with work, about making sure Sophie felt secure and loved. They made plans for the future, practical plans about how to make their relationship work sustainably. And Tanisha learned something important. Love wasn't just the easy moments, the joy and excitement and romance. Love was also showing up when things were hard. Facing fears instead of running. Choosing each other even when it would be easier to walk away. She jumped into the ocean once to save a drowning child. Now she was choosing to jump into love, with all its complications and challenges and terrifying vulnerability. And this time she was choosing to stay even when it scared her. Especially when it scared her. Because some things were worth being brave for. And Harrison and Sophie were absolutely worth it. 6 months after their relationship crisis, Tanisha's life had found a new rhythm. Bright Beginnings was flourishing, serving 50 children now with a waiting list. She'd hired 2 part-time teachers and had a roster of 15 regular volunteers. The program had gotten local news coverage and had attracted several additional donors beyond Harrison's initial funding. Harrison had made changes too. He'd promoted someone at his company to handle more day-to-day operations, freeing him up to work remotely more often. He and Sophie now spent 1 week a month in Atlanta, staying at a condo Harrison had purchased near Tanisha's apartment. They video chatted every evening without fail. And they'd established a rule. No matter how busy they got, they always made time for each other. It was working. Not perfectly but well enough. They still had hard days, still struggled with distance and schedules and the constant juggling of responsibilities. But they talked through it now. They didn't run. They stayed and fought for what they were building together. On a bright Saturday morning in April, Harrison flew into Atlanta with Sophie for what Tanisha thought was just another weekend visit. They planned to attend Bright Beginnings in the morning, then spend the afternoon together. Normal. Comfortable. The life they'd built. But when Harrison suggested a trip to the beach afterward, specifically Paradise Cove Beach Resort where they'd first met, Tanisha's suspicion radar activated. The beach? That's a 2-hour drive. I know. I thought it would be nice. We haven't been back since we met. Harrison, what's going on? Nothing, he said far too innocently. Just thought we could revisit where our story started. Sophie giggled from the back seat, and Tanisha knew something was definitely up. But she played along, letting Harrison navigate them back to the place where their lives had intersected. The resort looked exactly the same. white sand stretching into blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze, families scattered across the beach with towels and umbrellas. Tanisha felt a wave of nostalgia as they walked onto the sand. "Right there," Sophie said, pointing to a spot about 50 feet from shore. "That's where you saved me, Miss T." Tanisha squeezed her hand. "That's where our whole adventure started." They spread a blanket on the sand and Sophie pulled out a notebook. "I made something for you, Miss T. Want to see?" "Of course." Sophie opened the notebook to reveal a drawing, much more detailed than the stick figures from a year ago. It showed 3 people clearly meant to be Harrison, Tanisha, and Sophie standing together. They were holding hands. Behind them was a house with a heart drawn on the door. Above it, Sophie had written "My family" in careful letters. "Sophie, this is beautiful," Tanisha said, her throat tight with emotion. "Look at the next page," Sophie urged. Tanisha turned the page and found another drawing. This time it showed Tanisha in a white dress, Harrison in a suit, and Sophie in what looked like a fancy outfit. "Our wedding," was written at the top. Tanisha's hands started shaking. She looked up at Harrison, who was smiling. "Sophie has something to ask you," Harrison said softly. Sophie took a deep breath, serious and determined. "Miss T, will you marry my daddy? So we can be a real family all the time?" Tanisha felt tears streaming down her face. She looked at Harrison, who dropped to one knee in the sand beside their blanket. He pulled out a small velvet box. "Sophie asked me 3 weeks ago if she could have you as her mom," Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. "She said she loves you and wants us to be together always." And I realized she was right. I've been planning to propose for months, but I couldn't do it without Sophie being part of it. Because this isn't just about you and me. It's about the 3 of us becoming a family. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a blue sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "The stone is the same color as the dress you were wearing when we met. When you saved Sophie. When you changed our lives forever." Tanisha couldn't speak. She could only nod, tears flowing freely now. "I need you to say it out loud," Harrison said gently. "Tanisha Lewis, will you marry me? Will you be Sophie's mother? Will you be my wife and partner and the love of my life?" "Yes," Tanisha managed through her tears. "Yes to all of it. Yes to forever." Harrison slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. Sophie launched herself at both of them, and they all ended up in a pile on the blanket, laughing and crying at the same time. A small crowd had gathered, watching from a distance. They burst into applause. Tanisha recognized a few of them from that day a year ago, including the woman in the wide-brimmed hat who'd turned away when Sophie was drowning. She was clapping now, smiling like she'd been supportive all along. Tanisha didn't care about them. She only cared about the little girl in her arms and the man beside her, the family they'd become through courage and kindness and love that refused to give up. "We're getting married," Sophie said to anyone who would listen. "Miss T is going to be my mom." "Not officially until after the wedding," Harrison reminded her with a laugh. "Can I call you Mom before then?" Sophie asked Tanisha shyly. "Or is that not allowed yet?" Tanisha's heart cracked open. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, sweetheart." "Mom?" Sophie tested the word then smiled. "Mom. I like it." They spent the rest of the day on the beach, the same beach where a little girl had almost drowned and dozens of people had done nothing. The same beach where Tanisha had made the choice to jump in, to help, to care when caring was hard and scary. And now, a year later, that choice had brought her here. Engaged, becoming a mother, building a life with people she loved more than she'd known was possible. "Thank you for saving me," Sophie said as they walked along the shore that evening, the 3 of them hand in hand. "Not just from drowning. But thank you for saving both of us. We were sad before you. Now we're happy." "You saved me too," Tanisha said honestly. "I was stuck before I met you too. Scared of taking chances. Scared of accepting help. You taught me that it's okay to be brave. That it's okay to let people love you." Harrison squeezed her hand. "When should we get married?" "I'm thinking soon. I've waited long enough to make you officially mine." "What about June?" Tanisha suggested. 3 months from now. That gives us time to plan something small and meaningful." "June is perfect," Harrison agreed. "Sophie, you're going to be our flower girl. What color dress do you want?" "Red," Sophie said immediately. "Bright red. Like Miss T's, like Mom's literacy center colors." "Bright red it is," Tanisha said, her heart so full it hurt. As they drove back to Atlanta that evening, Sophie asleep in the back seat and Harrison's hand in hers, Tanisha thought about all the moments that had led them here. The terror of seeing a child drowning. The choice to jump in despite her fear. The willingness to accept Harrison's help and gratitude. The courage to let herself fall in love. The strength to fight for that love when doubt crept in. Every choice had mattered. Every brave moment had counted. And now those moments were weaving together into a future she'd never imagined but absolutely wanted. She was going to marry Harrison Bradford. She was going to be Sophie's mother. She was going to build a life with these two people who'd stumbled into her world and transformed it completely. And it had all started because she'd been willing to jump into the water when no one else would. Because she'd chosen courage over fear, kindness over indifference, love over safety. Some risks, Tanisha understood now, were absolutely worth taking. Have you ever taken a risk that changed your whole life? What brave choice led you to the people you love most? Share your story in the comments and subscribe to see how Tanisha and Harrison's wedding journey unfolds. 2 weeks before the wedding, Tanisha's carefully organized world began to collapse. It started with a phone call. The building owner of Bright Beginnings Literacy Center apologizing, explaining that he'd received an offer to sell the property he couldn't refuse. The new owner wanted to convert the space into luxury condos. Tanisha had 60 days to vacate. 60 days? Tanisha's voice cracked. We have 50 children enrolled. Their families depend on us. I'm sorry, Ms. Lewis. If I could do anything different, I would. But the contract has terms that allow for this. I'll refund your remaining lease payments. Tanisha hung up and sat in the empty classroom, surrounded by the bright walls and carefully organized books and learning stations she'd built. How was she supposed to find a new location, move everything, and maintain programming in 60 days? And that's assuming she could even find an affordable space, which in Atlanta's current real estate market seemed nearly impossible. She called Harrison, her hands shaking. We have a problem. Harrison arrived at Bright Beginnings within the hour, having left a company meeting mid-presentation to drive across town. He held Tanisha while she explained the situation, then immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. We'll find another location, he said firmly. I'll have my real estate contacts start looking today. We'll make this work. What if we can't find something in time? What about the kids? Some of them have made so much progress. We can't just disrupt their learning. We won't, Harrison promised. Trust me. We'll figure this out. But before they could even start looking at alternative locations, Harrison's phone rang. His face went pale as he listened to whoever was on the other end. I understand. I'll be on the next flight. What is it? Tanisha asked as he hung up. My company. There's been a hostile takeover attempt. Somebody's been quietly buying up shares and they're making a move to force me out. I need to get back to Boston immediately. Tanisha felt her chest constrict. For how long? I don't know. Could be days. Could be weeks. The board meeting is Monday. I need to prepare a defense, gather support, figure out who's behind this. He ran his hand through his hair, stress radiating off him. The wedding is in 2 weeks. We could postpone, Tanisha heard herself say, even though the words felt like knives. Focus on saving your company. Dealing with my program crisis. Get married when things settle down. Harrison grabbed her shoulders. No. I'm not postponing our wedding. I've waited long enough to marry you. We're not letting other people's agendas delay our happiness. But how are you going to fight a takeover and plan a wedding at the same time? I don't know yet. But I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. The next week was chaos. Harrison flew back to Boston, working 18-hour days meeting with lawyers and board members and major shareholders. Tanisha spent every free moment looking at potential locations for Bright Beginnings, but everything was either too expensive, too small, or in the wrong location. Her stress levels were through the roof. Sophie stayed with Tanisha in Atlanta, the original plan being that she'd be there for final wedding preparations. But with Harrison consumed by the takeover battle and Tanisha buried in real estate searches, the poor girl was caught in the middle of two stressed-out adults. Is the wedding still happening? Sophie asked one night as Tanisha tucked her into bed. Or are you and Daddy too busy now? The wedding is definitely happening, Tanisha said, though she wasn't entirely sure herself. How were they supposed to celebrate when both of their worlds were falling apart? Good, Sophie said, but her voice was small. Because I really want you to be my mom. For real. Tanisha hugged her tight. I already am your mom, sweetheart. The wedding is just making it official. Nothing's going to change that. But privately, Tanisha was starting to wonder if Patricia Bradford had been right all along. Maybe she and Harrison were from worlds too different to bridge. Maybe trying to blend their lives was always going to be this hard, this complicated, this exhausting. She was looking at another unsuitable property when Rachel, Harrison's sister, called. I heard about the building situation. What if I helped you look? I have time this week and I'm good at negotiating. Really? Tanisha felt tears of gratitude. You'd do that? Of course. You're about to be my sister-in-law. Besides, I believe in what you're doing at Bright Beginnings. Let me help. Rachel flew to Atlanta the next day. Together they looked at a dozen properties. Most were wrong for various reasons, but then Rachel found one that had potential. It was a former community center, larger than their current space, with multiple rooms they could use for different age groups. The location was perfect, right on a bus line and in a neighborhood that needed their services. But the rent was significantly higher than what Tanisha was currently paying. I can't afford this, Tanisha said, looking at the beautiful space with longing. Even with Harrison's funding, this is beyond our budget. What if I helped? Rachel said. I've been looking for good causes to support. Let me be an additional donor. Between Harrison's funding and mine, you could make this work. Rachel, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. And I'd like to be more involved. Maybe join your board, help with fundraising. I've been looking for something meaningful to do with my time and money. This could be it. Tanisha felt overwhelmed by the kindness. By the way Harrison's family was becoming her family. By how love expanded to include not just him and Sophie, but also his sister and eventually, hopefully, his mother too. Yes, she said, gratitude flooding through her. Thank you. Yes to all of it. They signed the lease that afternoon. Tanisha immediately started planning the move, recruiting volunteers, arranging for the transfer of materials and furniture. It would be tight, but they could do it. They could have the new location ready to open within the 60-day window. One crisis down. But Harrison's situation was still dire. He called that night exhausted. The board meeting is tomorrow. It's going to be bad. They have enough shares to force changes. Maybe even force me out entirely. What happens if they succeed? Tanisha asked, her heart aching for him. I don't know. I built that company from nothing. It's my life's work. But right now, all I can think about is that in 1 week, I'm supposed to be getting married, and instead I'm fighting for my professional survival. We could postpone, Tanisha said again, even though she didn't want to. No, Harrison said firmly. Win or lose this battle, I'm marrying you in 1 week. That's the only thing I'm certain about right now. Everything else might fall apart, but we won't. We can't. The next day, Tanisha paced her apartment, phone in hand, waiting for news from Boston. Sophie sat coloring at the kitchen table, unusually quiet, sensing the tension in the air. The call finally came at 6 p.m. Harrison's voice was hoarse. I won. Barely. We found out who was behind the takeover, and I was able to offer their shareholders a better deal. The company is still mine. Tanisha sagged with relief. Thank God. But it was close. Too close. And it made me realize something. I've been so focused on building and expanding and conquering the next challenge that I've lost sight of what matters. I'm going to make changes. Delegate more. Focus less on growth and more on stability. I want time for our family, Tanisha. Real time, not just stolen moments between crises. Are you sure? Your company is important to you. My company is a business, Harrison said quietly. You and Sophie are my life. I've had my priorities mixed up. Almost losing everything made that crystal clear. That night, Tanisha sat with Sophie, both of them eating ice cream from the container, celebrating the good news. Your dad saved his company. I knew he would, Sophie said confidently. Daddy always figures things out. Just like you figured out the new building. We're a good team. We are, Tanisha agreed. Your dad and I make a great team. Even when things are hard. So the wedding is really happening? For real, for real. For real, for real, Tanisha confirmed. 1 week from today I'm going to marry your dad. And you're going to be the best flower girl anyone's ever seen. Sophie grinned, ice cream on her nose. I've been practicing. Want to see? As Tanisha watched Sophie practice her flower girl walk across the living room, she felt the weight of the past 2 weeks lift. They'd made it through. Both crises, both storms. They'd held on to what mattered and found solutions to the problems that tried to tear them apart. Some people might have given up. Might have decided that the universe was sending a sign, that the obstacles meant they weren't supposed to be together. But Tanisha and Harrison had fought for their love. Had refused to let external chaos destroy their happiness. And now, in 7 days, they'd stand in front of their families and friends and make promises to each other. Promises that had already been tested by fire and proven true. Promises built on courage and kindness and the kind of love that refuses to quit. The storms had passed. The joy was coming. The wedding day arrived sunny and perfect, the kind of June morning that felt like a blessing. Tanisha stood in the bridal suite at a small historic venue in Atlanta, looking at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back. The dress was simple, elegant white silk that skimmed her figure and flowed to the ground. Her hair was styled in natural curls, adorned with small white flowers. Her grandmother's pearl earrings sparkled at her ears. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked happy. Peaceful. Ready. "Let me look at you," Graham said from the doorway. She walked slowly into the room, her cane tapping on the hardwood floor. Her face lit up with pure joy. "Oh, baby girl. You're stunning." "Thanks, Graham." Tanisha hugged her carefully. "I can't believe this is really happening." "Believe it," Graham said firmly. "That man loves you something fierce. And you love him. I've never been more sure of anything." A knock on the door revealed Rachel, Harrison's sister, looking beautiful in her bright green bridesmaid dress. "Everyone's ready." Sophie's bouncing with excitement. "And Harrison looks like he's about to pass out from nerves." Tanisha laughed. "He's nervous?" "Terrified," Rachel confirmed. "In the best way. The way a man should be when he's about to marry the love of his life." The ceremony was small, just 30 people gathered in the venue's garden. White chairs arranged on either side of an aisle lined with flower petals. String lights hanging from the trees, though it was still daylight. Classical music playing softly from speakers hidden in the landscaping. Tanisha's parents sat in the front row on one side, her father already wiping tears from his eyes. Jerome sat next to them with his fiancée, grinning at his little sister. Her Aunt Carol and cousins filled out the rest of the row. Graham sat in a place of honor, her face radiant. On the other side, Patricia Bradford sat primly, wearing pale blue and pearls. But when she caught Tanisha's eye as the bridal party lined up, she smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. Harrison's business partners and closest friends filled the remaining seats. And scattered throughout were children from bright beginnings with their families. The kids who'd been part of Tanisha's journey, whose lives she'd touched. They wore their best clothes and held flowers, excited to see their teacher get married. The music changed. Sophie appeared at the end of the aisle, wearing her bright red dress as requested, carrying a basket of white petals. She walked slowly, carefully, taking her role seriously. Every few steps she'd stop and toss petals with great concentration. The guests smiled and chanted. When Sophie reached the front, she took her place and waved at Tanisha, who blew her a kiss. Then the bridal march began. Tanisha appeared with her father, his arm linked through hers. Ann Harrison turned to look at her. Tanisha watched his face transform. Watched tears fill his eyes even though he was smiling. Watched him mouth, "You're beautiful," across the distance between them. And she felt her own tears start to fall. This was it. This was the moment everything had been building toward since that day on the beach. The day she'd chosen to jump in, to help, to care when no one else would. The day she'd saved a drowning girl and unknowingly saved herself in the process. Her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Harrison's. "Take care of my baby girl." "Always," Harrison promised, his voice thick with emotion. "I swear it." The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They'd written their own vows, words from the heart rather than traditional promises. Harrison went first, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "Tanisha, a year ago I was drowning too. Not in water, but in grief and loneliness and going through the motions of life without really living. And then you saved my daughter, and in doing so you saved me too. You reminded me what it means to be brave. To care. To love with your whole heart even when it's scary. You've made me a better father, a better man, a better person. You've given Sophie the mother she deserves and me the partner I never thought I'd find again. I promise to love you, support you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life. I promise to be worthy of the courage you showed when you jumped into the water. And I promise that our life together will be full of laughter, adventure, and the kind of love that makes everything worthwhile." Tanisha was crying openly now. She took a shaky breath and began her vows. "Harrison, when I jumped into that ocean I was terrified. But I did it anyway because someone needed help. And that choice brought me to you. Brought me to Sophie. Brought me to this moment right here. You've taught me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That letting people love you is just as brave as loving them. You've supported my dreams without trying to control them. You've been my partner in every sense of the word. And you've given me a family I never knew I needed but now can't imagine living without. I promise to love you through the easy times and the hard times. I promise to be Sophie's mother, to raise her with patience and love and all the hope in my heart. I promise to keep choosing courage over fear, love over doubt. And I promise that every day with you and Sophie, I'll be grateful for the moment I decided to jump in. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even Patricia Bradford was dabbing at her face with a handkerchief. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Harrison, you may kiss your bride. Harrison pulled Tanisha close and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. The guests erupted in applause. Sophie jumped up and down, clapping so hard her hands probably hurt. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Harrison Bradford and their daughter Sophie. At the word daughter, Sophie ran forward and threw her arms around both of them. Harrison lifted her up between them and they stood there as a family, the three of them, while their loved ones cheered and camera phones flashed. The reception was held in the same garden, tables set up under the trees, simple food served family style. There were toasts and laughter and terrible dancing. The children from Bright Beginnings presented Tanisha and Harrison with a scrapbook they'd made, full of drawings and thank you notes. Jerome made everyone laugh with embarrassing stories about Tanisha as a kid. Rachel gave a toast about how Tanisha had transformed her brother back into someone who knew how to smile. Patricia Bradford stood to speak and the garden went quiet. When my son told me he was dating Tanisha, I had concerns. Our world seemed very different. But I've learned over this past year that what matters isn't where you come from, it's who you are. Tanisha, you are brave, kind, and dedicated. You saved my granddaughter's life. You made my son happy again. You've built something meaningful with Bright Beginnings. And you've shown me that family isn't about status or background. It's about love and commitment and showing up for each other. Welcome to our family. We're better because you're in it. Tanisha hugged her new mother-in-law, both of them crying. Patricia whispered, I was wrong to doubt you. I'm sorry. And I'm grateful my son had the sense not to listen to me. As the sun set and the string lights glowed brighter, Harrison and Tanisha had their first dance as a married couple. Sophie sat at a table with Graham, both of them watching with matching expressions of contentment. Happy? Harrison murmured as they swayed to the music. Completely, Tanisha said. This is perfect. Everything is perfect. What do you want to do for our honeymoon? We never actually planned anything because of all the chaos. Tanisha smiled. I was thinking we could go back to Paradise Cove. The three of us. Return to where it all started. With Sophie? Of course with Sophie. She's part of this story. She's part of us. I can't imagine celebrating without her. Harrison pulled back to look at her, love written all over his face. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? You may have mentioned it once or twice today, Tanisha teased. But I don't mind hearing it again. I love you, Mrs. Bradford. More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too, Tanisha said. Thank you for not giving up on us when things got hard. For fighting for this. Always, Harrison promised. I'll always fight for us. 3 days later, the three of them stood on the beach at Paradise Cove Resort, right near the spot where Sophie had almost drowned 15 months earlier. So much had changed since that day. So much had been built from one moment of courage, one choice to help when everyone else turned away. Sophie wore her favorite green swimsuit and stood between them, holding both their hands. This is where our family started, she said seriously. Right here. You're right, Tanisha agreed, squeezing her daughter's hand. Because Sophie was her daughter now, officially and legally and in every way that mattered. This is where everything began. Can we make a wish? Sophie asked. For our family? What do you want to wish for? Harrison asked. That we stay together forever, Sophie said immediately. That we're always happy like this. That nothing bad ever happens to us. Tanisha knelt in the sand beside her. Baby, we can't wish for nothing bad to ever happen. Life has hard parts. That's just how it works. But we can promise to face the hard parts together. To take care of each other. To keep choosing love and kindness and hope even when things are difficult. That's the wish we can make and actually keep. Sophie thought about that. Okay. I wish that we always take care of each other. And that we stay brave. And that we remember that love is the most important thing. I like that wish, Harrison said softly. Can we all wish it together? The three of them stood on the beach, hands linked, waves lapping at their feet. They closed their eyes and made the same wish, sending it out into the universe with all the hope and faith and love in their hearts. When Tanisha opened her eyes, she saw a family playing nearby. A little boy was splashing in the shallow water while his parents watched from the shore. And she thought about the dozens of people who'd stood on this beach 15 months ago and done nothing while a child drowned. She thought about how easy it would have been to be one of them, to turn away, to let someone else handle it. But she hadn't turned away. She jumped in. And that single choice had rippled outward, creating waves of change she never could have predicted. She'd saved Sophie, met Harrison, built bright beginnings, created this family, touched dozens of children's lives through her literacy program, inspired others to be braver, kinder, more willing to help. One choice, one moment of courage. That's all it had taken to change everything. What are you thinking about? Harrison asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. About how grateful I am that I jumped in that day. About how one brave choice led to all of this. I'm grateful too, Harrison said. Every single day I'm grateful you were here. That you cared. That you didn't walk away like everyone else. I could never have walked away, Tanisha said. Not from Sophie. And not from you. They spent the afternoon on the beach, the three of them building sandcastles and collecting shells and playing in the waves. Later they had dinner at the same restaurant where Harrison had first thanked Tanisha, where Sophie had asked if Miss Tanisha could live near them. We've come full circle, Tanisha said, looking around the familiar space. No, Harrison corrected gently. We've spiraled up. We're not back where we started. We're somewhere better. Higher. Stronger. We've grown. He was right. They weren't the same people who'd sat at this table 15 months ago. The grief-stricken widower and lonely daughter had become a thriving father and confident child. The struggling teacher had become a non-profit founder and published author. Her book about teaching literacy to young children was coming out in the fall. And together, they'd become a family built on courage, kindness, and love that refused to quit. That night, after Sophie was asleep in the condo bedroom, Harrison and Tanisha sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean. The moon was bright, reflecting off the water in a silver path. Do you think we would have met if Sophie hadn't almost drowned that day? Tanisha asked. Or was this always meant to happen somehow? I don't know, Harrison said honestly. Maybe we would have crossed paths some other way. Maybe not. But I do know that I'm grateful for exactly how it happened, even though it was terrifying in the moment. Because it brought us here. Here, Tanisha repeated, looking out at the same ocean that had almost taken Sophie but instead had brought them all together. Here is pretty wonderful. Here is everything, Harrison said. He pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves and listening to the night sounds and feeling grateful for every choice that had led them to this moment. Inside, Sophie slept peacefully, safe and loved. In Atlanta, Bright Beginnings Literacy Center sat ready to open in its new location, prepared to serve even more children. In Boston, Harrison's company operated smoothly under its improved leadership structure. And in their hearts, Tanisha and Harrison carried the knowledge that they'd built something real and lasting, something worth fighting for. All because one woman had seen a child drowning and chosen to jump in when everyone else turned away. All because kindness had won over indifference. Because courage had won over fear. Because love had won over everything else. And in the end, wasn't that the whole point? To choose love even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. To be brave enough to care. To build families not just from blood but from choice and commitment and showing up every single day. Tanisha had jumped into the ocean 15 months ago. And she'd never stopped jumping, never stopped choosing courage, never stopped believing that one person could make a difference. She'd saved a drowning girl. And in return, that girl and her father had saved her right back, pulling her into a life fuller and more beautiful than anything she'd imagined possible. Sometimes the people you save end up saving you too. That's how love works. That's how families are built. That's how hope survives in a world that often feels too cold and too indifferent. One brave choice. One act of kindness. That's all it takes to change everything. Tanisha had made that choice. And it had led to everything that mattered. She smiled and leaned into Harrison's embrace, watching the moon on the water, feeling the warmth of the man she loved and the peace of knowing that tomorrow she'd wake up as someone's wife and someone's mother and someone who'd built something meaningful with her life. This was happiness. This was home. This was what happened when you chose courage over fear, kindness over indifference, love over everything else. This was the life worth jumping for.